exhibits, including photographs by Bruce Mozart and mixed media by Christina Deanne. Hours are Thursday through Saturday, 10 a.m. to 5 p.m., and Sundays, noon to 5 p.m. The museum is closed Mondays through Wednesdays. Masks are required, and visitor occupancy is being monitored. For more information, visit appletonmuseum.org.
Welcome back to Ocala Talks with Tom Schmitz. On the phone lines with us right now, kind enough to talk to us about the COVID-19 pandemic. It's especially worrisome for older adults and those living with underlying conditions. In fact, COVID-19 has changed the way people access critical health care and advanced the adoption of telehealth services. This is such an important topic, we couldn't wait to talk to Davida Kruger. She is a nurse practitioner who's teamed up with Dexcom to share critical information about life-changing technologies with diabetes and COVID-19. Davida, good morning to you.
Good morning to you as well. Thank you for having me.
Let's talk for a minute. When we hear about diabetes, we people are familiar with diabetes. My sister suffers from diabetes, so I, as a family member, have been acquainted with diabetes for a very long time. But with COVID-19, you always hear diabetes is one of those underlying things that would make COVID more susceptible to COVID. What is the correlation between COVID and things like diabetes?
Well, in general, people who have diabetes tend to be a little more susceptible, and that's why we make sure they get their flu shots and all their vaccines and so forth and so on. So what makes them is if their blood glucoses are not in good control, and that's beyond just looking at A1C. We look at what's called time in range so that all blood sugars look good. Those individuals tend to be more susceptible, but more importantly, if they get COVID, then their outcome is not as good unless we control their blood sugars very, very well. So what we started to do in March when all of this hit is we flipped everybody to telemedicine, and we really have worked hard to get everybody's diabetes as in best control as we can, in addition to talking about masks and distancing and hand washing, because tight control, making sure their blood sugars have time and range, and we're using a lot of continuous glucose monitoring, such as the Dexcom G6, so that I can see their data long distance, and they can see more blood glucose data, more than just a finger stick here or there.
I'm looking at the prep work for this interview, and I'm astonished by some of these numbers that older adults with underlying conditions like diabetes are 6 times more likely to end up in the hospital with COVID and 12 times more likely to die from it. That's some scary numbers.
It is scary numbers, and don't forget that those individuals are 1 in every 4 individuals over 65 has diabetes. And if you have type 2 diabetes, you are more prone to cardiovascular disease, meaning heart attacks and stroke. So you are already predisposed to those things, which make you more disposed to something like COVID. And remember, there's over 34 million people in the United States with diabetes. That's 10% of all of our population. So this is really important to understand, and also important for patients to understand the seriousness of diabetes and their healthcare providers and best practices to manage their glucose data. And that's why we're really using the Dexcom G6 to help manage those numbers and to show patients the seriousness of managing their diabetes.
We've talked about patients with diabetes, but what about older adults, or any adults actually, that they may or may not, they got some things that they just don't seem right, and they're not diagnosed with diabetes yet. What's the process, and what are questions you can ask your doctor to see if maybe you suffer from diabetes or needs to get looked at?
Absolutely. So if you have a family history, if you're overweight, you're inactive, you have heels that don't, wounds or sores that don't heal, or infections that don't, you really should be checked. And I think annually most healthcare providers over a particular age will start checking for diabetes. But you want them to look at not only a random blood sugar, but you want them to look at something called a hemoglobin A1C. And if it's less than 5%, you don't have diabetes. If it's 5 5% to 6.4%, you have pre-diabetes, and that's the time to start working on the diabetes so that, or your health and your weight and your activity, so that you don't move into diabetes. And then if you have an A1C greater than 6.4, that's called diabetes, and you should take it very, very seriously.
You know, a lot of people, I think you hit on the topic there, a lot of people think, my sister was, when she was diagnosed young in her 30s with diabetes, and she would do this. She would take her medicine, she'd feel better, she'd stop taking her medicine. Then she'd feel terrible, she'd take her medicine, she'd feel better. Talk about how dangerous that way of dealing with diabetes is.
So I think it's a bigger picture issue, and she's not the only one that I've ever seen that happen to. And part of the problem is that we don't talk about the seriousness of diabetes. We don't talk about the risks and the complications, and all people see is elevated blood glucoses, and exactly how you describe it is, I feel good, so why should I take medication? And it's not just with diabetes. We see that with blood pressure, and we see that with cholesterol. But what we want patients to understand is, even if you feel okay or better, if we can get glucose data from them, such as if we put a continuous glucose monitor on your sister, and she could see that as soon as she came off her medications, what's happening to her blood glucoses, because if I give her Dexcom G6, she can see every 5 minutes the change in blood sugars. That would be the seriousness she needs to understand. And by not taking your medication, by not controlling your diabetes and keeping your blood sugars time and range, you are damaging your organs, and we know diabetes affects every organ in the body. And if I can give you better diabetes control by keeping blood glucoses time and range, giving you a sensor, then I can hopefully prevent long-term complications. And with the fact that patients are so much susceptible to COVID, and the fact that we want them to not only avoid it, but if they get it, have a better outcome, it's all about glucose control.
You talk about diabetes, you said blood pressure, and all. These are when I was growing up, they were called the silent killers, because you don't have any outward signs of until you go into a blood sugar coma or something. You don't have any outward signs that something's going on wrong with you. What are some tools people can use that have diabetes that can manage their condition and help them manage it through COVID-19?
So we really want people to stay active. And sometimes when you're home 24/7, it's hard. But even if you can't get out to a gym or walk around your block, we want you to do some type of activity on a regular basis. We want you to eat healthy. It's easy to pick up whatever's in front of you, but good nutrition will help. And then, yes, take all the medications that have been prescribed. So even if you don't feel an elevated blood pressure, if you've been prescribed that medication, take it. And for cholesterol, take it. And then in terms of diabetes, taking all of your medication and looking at your glucoses on a regular basis through something like a continuous glucose monitoring, the Dexcom G6, and sending you that data and sharing it with your healthcare provider. So I want my patients to still do telemedicine with me, even if they can't come into the office. And I want to ask them what's going on with their weight, what's going on with their activity, and can you send me your Dexcom data so that I can help manage your diabetes. But you may not feel high blood sugars, but you could see it on the Dexcom. And the Dexcom has alarms, so if the blood sugars are high or low, the patient's going to be notified.
Telemedicine is really the 21st century's version of home visits by a doctor, is it not?
That's a great way. I started my career as a visiting nurse, and I hadn't made that connection, but yeah, I love it. So absolutely. And there's so much I can do that I didn't think before COVID that I could do through telemedicine. I mean, I can look at people's feet. I can't touch their pulses, but I can certainly look at their feet and sites of where they're taking injection. And I have been able to start people on continuous glucose monitors, the Dexcom, without any difficulty through telemedicine. But I love that analogy. I'm going to steal it from you because I think people need to feel more and more comfortable with the fact that this is what we've been dealt right now. I'm not seeing that COVID's going away that quickly. We don't have a vaccine, so I'm going to be managing you from home as best I can. And I think it's awesome. And again, I want data. I need data to help you, and I can teach you how to use a continuous glucose monitor, the Dexcom G6. Your data can be uploaded to the cloud, and I can then help you even better.
Telemedicine, the 21st century house call from medical profession. You steal it. Go ahead.
There you go.
Take it from me.
I'm stealing it.
How can people find out more information about this? We're talking with Davida Kruger. She's a nurse practitioner who's teamed up with Dexcom to share critical information about life-changing diabetes technology. If somebody wanted to find out more about this, Davida, how could they find it?
They can go to Dexcom, which is DEXCOM.com. Great website. Talks not only about the device and how to get it, but how to share information with your healthcare provider and interpret the data, but also some good diabetes. So Dexcom.com. Dexcom,
DEXCOM.com. Davida, thank you so much for having this phone call with us. And remember, even if you copyright it and make money off of it, I'm the person that came up with the 21st century house call.
I'm going to call you and let you know if I do.
Davida Kruger, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, that telemedicine, that's where it's going. That's where everything's going these days. I'm a firm believer that that's the way medicine's going. We'll come back after this. Time out. Right here on 1370 AM, 96.3 FM, WOCA, The Source.
Broadcasting from the Paddock Mall Studios, this is WOCA, Ocala, Gainesville, The Villages, 1370 AM, 96.3 FM, The Source.
USA Radio News with Lance Pride.
Tonight will probably be the last time we see the two presidential candidates together in one room. The debate on the campus of Belmont University in Nashville. Don Jr., the president's son, on Fox News points out some irregularities imposed by the debate commission.
You see what's gone on over the last few weeks when it comes to the moderator of the second debate being a Joe Biden intern, sending DMs but actually doing it on Twitter to never Trumpers to try to get some a way to hit Trump, lying about it, saying that they were hacked, and then ultimately getting caught. This moderator apparently is a big Obama administration person. I mean, you literally can't make up the nonsense. When you look at the bias that we face on a daily basis, it's literally hard to believe.
The 90-minute debate will begin at 9 p.m. Eastern and will be moderated by Kristen Welker of NBC News. USA Radio News.
Attention business owners body slammed by overwhelming debt. If your business is in trouble, hassled by creditors, if you're frustrated, finally fed up with big business bailouts while your business has been left for dead, please listen close. There's a brand new fast-track bankruptcy. Some have even called it the biggest small business bailout in American history. Designed for individuals and their businesses. And look, almost no one knows about this yet. My attorney wasn't even aware of it. The truth is, beating the system has never been easy because it's rigged in a sense against the little guy. But here's the jaw-dropping news nobody's talking about. They've literally just changed the system so that you can beat it, but only if you understand how the new game has to be played. Find out if you qualify at pocketsoflight.com. This government-backed small business repair program is still legal, but may not be renewed after the election. Fight back fairly, fight back ethically at pocketsoflight.com.
Okay, folks, you know how much we love MyPillow products and what the
Super 8 Motel Ocala, right down the road on 40, just west of I-75. And they're pet friendly. Have truck parking, free breakfast, a swimming pool, a kiddie pool. And veterans get 10% off.